please join me in welcoming A.H. Mustafa to the stage.
Hello? Yep. So thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. And I'll point out to the title of the speech, which is Writing a Better User Story. What I'm going to do is not teach you how to write a better user story, but what I'm trying to do is basically define a process and take you through a journey. And at the end of the journey, hopefully you'll be able to connect with that title and essentially write a better user story. So it's a process, it's a journey, not the way to write the story, but the journey of it. That's what I'm going to propose over here. So essentially, I've been working on it for quite some time, and based on some of the experience that I've had within a couple of industries that I've worked in, I've seen there are product managers who are struggling to write stories. It doesn't have any details. It has too many details. And from that, I have started my extensive research on how to give out a structure where a better user story can be written. And everywhere I've seen it's the same structure. But what I've stumbled upon is basically there is a way where you are able to come together, formulate ideas, discuss different stuff from the requirement, and then create a better user story. But that being said, before getting into the details of it, I'll just give you a bit bio. Oh, I have a nice bindia, by the way. It looks nice on my face. Yeah, so I'm a product manager at heart, and I've been working in this industry for like 15 years as a product manager in different roles, different verticals. As you can see, all the logos that I've put up. And currently, I'm working at Bikash as a technical program manager and a delivery engineer. What I love to do is basically, I've written a little bit. I'll just explain it. What I love to do is basically create products or be a part of it, which essentially impacts society or people. Like when I see somebody is using, like I worked with Sahaj Food. When I was working with Sahaj Food and some people were starting using it, it gave me immense joy. And I used to thrive on feedback and giving feedback back, talking to customers. And this is how I understood that there is a huge gap between how the requirement is being gathered, how the requirement is being written, how essentially when it's coming onto the development floor, there is a huge difference in expectation and what we release. So I love working with products which essentially changes people's lives, and I've been working on it for a very long time. And from that, this is my small approach, a very small approach of trying to rectify things in terms of writing the story. So I'll just start with it. Now, if you follow this image, what you'll see is basically currently a lot of product managers, what they do is basically go through this journey. I'm not going to get too much details of it, but these are the steps essentially which a product manager goes through before gathering the requirement. So they start with a plan, find out the pain points, find out the gaps where there are pain points with the customer, prioritizes them, and then manages them into a list of requirements which he wants to build. So with all those steps, it's a huge process. It takes quite a bit of time. And after spending so much time, what product manager comes up with is user understanding of what the pain point is. Also, to finalize the requirement, he has to write a story or a PRD. But what he dumps into the PRD is basically his understanding of the pain point, what the pain point is. He does not have an understanding of what the technical difficulty is, because a lot of product managers are not technical in nature. They would come up with a requirement and just talk to the engineers that this is what I want to build. These are the requirements. Sorry about that. And after even all those journey, he will come up with a requirement which is, to the engineers, are a bit half-baked. So what does half-baked mean? Like it does not have an understanding of how the existing product is working, what are the capacity of that product that can be scaled up, and at the same time, how would it benefit eventually into rolling it out into the market? Like you cannot just dump everything in one go and expect it to work. You have to iteratively check if it's working, check with the customers. Maybe you might need a smaller adjustment. And in this way, this journey takes place, and even when the requirement is dumped, there is a lack of clarity of it. So to understand the process that I'm going to propose today over here, I'm going to provide you with a juxtapose image of what I could gather from the internet and trying to give you an understanding of what I'm trying to portray, which is there is a statement: design, analyze, and then plan. So these are, let's say, all the discovery phase. Imagine if the product manager comes in, brings in everybody together. Let's say such as this room, there are people from the different functions of the Scrum team. There are QAs, there are team leads, engineers, and also let's say a chief architect who's thinking about how the system can be scaled. All of them are coming together and sits in one place and starts contributing in discovery how the requirement should look like before even starts the development. So when that is done, essentially you are not getting one perspective, you are getting multiple perspectives from different areas, different functions, different people who are engaged in the Scrum team. And that's how much more detailed requirement comes in. So this is the process, how it look like if you envision it. But when you get into the structure, you will be able to relate it a little bit better. Now, what I'm trying to propose, the structure what I'm talking about, the process that I'm talking about is essentially an approach which brings everybody together and creates a melting pot of vantage point. What I mean by vantage point is basically let's say perspective from team lead. When he provides a requirement, I want this requirement to be developed, which may be having OTP integration within the login. And suddenly he does not know how SMS gateways work. And he comes in and says that I need this. Then there is a cost association to it. Maybe product manager does not know about it. So when team leads and people who worked in the industry comes in together and provides their vantage point, essentially with the existing practice that already we practice in Scrum and in Agile Manifesto, that with the feedback loop and everything, we gather them together, get the vantage point in one place, and create a much better user story. That's what I'm proposing today. Well, the primary concept I've already discussed a little bit, which is essentially discuss and analyze the requirement collectively. What I mean by collectively is basically there would be a Scrum team, and all those Scrum team formulating a comprehensive team in one place, sitting in one area, discussing them in depth, in details, collaborating and contributing at the same time. And once that is happening, it's not like only the product managers is creating the story, but everybody's collaborating in creating the user story. That's how a much better user story with much more detail can be created from the initiation of the discovery phase. Now, what's the difference between the traditional method and the method that I'm talking about? Which is we already the practice is there in the industry where the Scrum team looks at the product manager and says, you are the one who's providing the requirement. You are the one who's providing us all the business requirements that are needed, what you want to build. And essentially, he does that. He writes that requirement. And then what happens is there is a multiple back and forth, multiple discussion taking place, which is essentially eating up from the project timeline. And by doing that, the product manager is basically have to go to the market, talk to the team lead separately, and trying to get the detail to write a better user story. But essentially what he's doing is basically doing it separately, and what I'm proposing is doing it together in one place where everybody as a team brings in their understanding of how the requirement should be formulated and formulates together. Yes, PM still guides the whole process. He is in charge of the process. He's driving the driving force of the process. So the product manager's role is not abolished, but essentially decentralized. Everybody is taking part, and that's the beautiful part of it. Okay. I think everybody has an understanding of who this person is, Mike Cohen. He is a very prolific Scrum and Agile practitioner and an author. I've been following him for maybe more than 1.5 years now. And that's once you have the slides, you will be able to click on the link. It's Mountain Goat Software. And Mountain Goat Software has all these methods of how you should write a story, split the story. And it has extensive workshop. And after my experience with all the pain points that I'm seeing, like when the story is being written, it's written in a very detailed manner or a less detailed manner. And I came up with this process, which is already in this website. You can find it, where how the story can be split in a better way. They have an AI which helps you to, I think the name of it is Lumberjack. You can Google it, and you will be able to find out that how the each individual story can be split. But what I have found in Bangladesh, in foreign country as well, the writing of the requirement is not proper or not crisp enough. And that's how I found out that if I can take some of the inspiration from him, bring those together in one place and create this process, I think it would help a lot of product managers in creating much more better user story. But in reality, what I'm trying to do is basically taking my responsibility, giving it to everybody else. So that's what I'm trying to do. But this process gives you a structure of how this should be done. Now, before we get into the structure, I've been calling out the structure, the process, but there are some few key points. I'm just setting up the stage before I get into that structure itself. So basically, what you can do is you start that process from the ideation stage, when the product manager is gathering requirement and formulating a roadmap. Let's say you are in Q2 and you want to have some features developed within Q3 so that in Q4 or in the end of Q3, you are able to ship it. That's your plan. The product manager plans it. You can start this process in Q2 so that you're ready for Q3. So it starts from the beginning. And I will keep on repeating this point, which is joining in the detailing of it. Everybody joins in detailing of the requirement. And when there is multiple viewpoints, when there is corner cases that are discussed, like definitely QA would come in with his perspective and say, have you thought about this one? If you do this, there are some complications that are existing in the current product that you offer in the market. You are creating much more. So I think rather than doing this, let's change it to this. And product manager takes note, talks to the team lead as well at the same time, and figures out a way of how to formulate that requirement before the requirement is being written. And then, like when all the viewpoint is being culminated in one place, essentially you are taking a journey, a focused journey. That is what I'm saying the process is. So this journey would take everybody in one boat through the requirement analysis part, through the discovery part, and at the end of it, like the tunnel, at the end of it, you can see light, which is the user story. That's more or less the crux of it. And the most important part is, normally, if there is any sort of problem that the requirement was not complete and it's developed, and then it's shipped, suddenly there is a market chaos, and everybody points to the product manager. You did not write that story or that requirement in that story. And that's a common mistake. And the product manager gets shitless. Like he gets scared, like what I do, what I will do. I'll release another version. And essentially what happens is you keep on releasing multiple versions and creating a chaos within the user base. But now in this process, you can create a joint ownership where everybody knows what they're talking about. Everybody knows what they have contributed. Everybody knows what requirement is being formulated and what it takes to build it. So there are some key benefits. I'll touch on them a bit later at the end of the discussion, but I'll just go through some of the some key benefits of this approach, which is it will definitely yield a better requirement analysis process. It will definitely create a shared ownership because everybody is coming together, contributing into that requirement. Better prioritization. What I mean by better prioritization is the process itself that I'm going to show has priority listing, or the structuring of the priority is baked into it. So that is better prioritization. And once that prioritization is done, product manager understands what he wants to put in his requirement. Hence, the product manager is able to break it down in an effective manner. And once that is done, remember I told you, like when the requirement is coming in, listing down by the product manager, he goes to multiple places to get the understanding because everybody is asking questions, everybody is asking clarifications. Like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? But incrementally, in a linear method. And when he does that in one sitting, in one session, in that structure, what happens is you get rid of those waste. You get rid of those extra discussion, like we have a term like it's a paralysis through analysis. And that's what product managers becomes at the end of the day, like after analyzing too much. So when that is done in one go, in one process, through this process, a reduction in timeline for the whole project shrinks. It might shrink significantly, it might shrink like a little bit, but it will shrink. There will be there will be decluttering per se. So before you start with this process, there are some ground rules that everybody within the Scrum team needs to follow. And that ground rule, it's like an agreement that you need to have that agreement within the Scrum team, where product manager essentially provides an outline. He needs to provide an initial outline of the requirement. That is like very important, because without those, the team will not be able to start what he wants to do. The plan, what he wants to do, he needs to outline that. Like, let's say through any visual aid or anything, he needs to outline those requirements. And the requirements that you put forward must have an objective, like what he wants to do after that quarter. Let's say the product manager is thinking that this requirement is a very big requirement which has multiple sub-features, but at the end of the day, after this is released, there is an objective. He wants to do this: customer acquisition, getting better ROI, improving churn rate, all of those things. He needs to outline them and at the same time connect with an objective. And in every requirement, everybody needs to question what do you want to do with this? What's the outcome? What's your matrices of your outcome? How would you measure it? So all those discussions would come into play. And then every single requirement needs to be prioritized. I'm not talking about the story itself, because story hasn't been born yet, but the requirement, the high level outline of it, every one of them needs to be prioritized. And the common fallacy is, if you look at some of the Jira tickets, there are like 5 items with highest priority. I don't know how that happens. Like, there is a fixed bandwidth, there is a fixed effort, and the number of people who would be working or coding would be limited. In that area, I don't know, if you push in 2 requirements, what will happen? The team gets split. He does not know, the developer does not know which to work on. And then comes to the product manager, like, can you prioritize it so that I can work on it? Just tell me. And that is what I'm trying to not do, which is having 2 story or 2 requirements having the same priority. If there is one highest priority, there should be one highest priority. If it's high, it should be 1. And then slowly, gradually going down. And this is an important part, which is shippability. So if the story is being developed, it needs to be shippable. This is a clear difference between what a business viable release or not business viable release is, which is potentially shippable means if you build it, it will function. So functional wise, in terms of functionality, it would work. But it will not create any business, or users will not be able to complete the journey. So individual story must be shippable. That's an important distinguishing factor from releasable. So now I'll start with the structure. The approach would be, this is basically a session that I'm calling it a refinement week, or you can call this period anything, but there needs to be a focused approach, a focused time period where everybody is focused on isolating the requirement, listing out those requirements, and how those requirements will come into being into a story. This is how they would do it because there needs to be a focused approach. And that focus is basically, this is an ideal case, what I've been looking at in different projects where if you spend like 3 to 5 days, which is a week, and then spend every day 2 to 3 days in a closed session with all the requirement members of Scrum team, there would be a really good exercise of requirement analysis. And definitely the full Scrum team needs to be attending, and in individual session are called storyboarding. So that's the initial structure of that session, how it looked like. And what would be the activities of those of that session, which is initially PM, the product manager comes in with a list of requirement that I've set as a contract. He brings in on the list of requirement and provides a high-level brief of individual requirement of what that requirement would look like what he wants to do essentially. And he also provides a plan for that quarter. Like let's say in Q3, he wants to get more customers, like 60% more customers. And individual requirement needs to be able to connect with that, that plan. And also, all of the requirement should have a priority, like P0, P1, and so on. And there should be a bigger goal and a smaller goal. So what does the big goal means? The big goal means essentially what he wants to do in that quarter, like what is his larger objective. An individual requirement needs to be able to connect with that bigger goal. And once you connect them, everybody knows that this is a small part of the story that connects to the bigger objective. If he wants to provide authentication from a login journey, there might be a droppage of customer. But if he wants to improve the retention rate, that is completely flip side. So they will have to figure something else out in terms of feature. So that's how the goal connection is important. So once you start with the initial understanding of how the process is starting, you are defining the activity of it. And then once you start with the activity, you list out all the requirements, you connect them with your goals and your objectives, and then start story mapping. That's the next part of the process. And it will start something in that order where the product manager, what he does is basically scribbles it out, like something of this sort as a board, and maybe just writes down anything that resembles an interface so that everybody can understand. It's a visual aid essentially, and defines the requirement in details through a journey of interfaces. Once he does that, everybody is able to understand what the output might look like down the line. So that's an interesting part, which is everybody has an understanding of how it might look like so that they will be able to connect with the requirement itself. And then this is something I was talking about. So you can come in a board and then start detailing out the requirements. The sticky notes, you can use sticky notes, or you can use a huge printout where you can start writing the requirements, which completes the journey. And this is the structure, essentially, of the process. And I don't have a clicker, like the laser doesn't work, but I'll try to guide you as much as possible. So this is the basic structure of story mapping. There are multiple structures over the internet where you can search how you can story map things. There are complicated versions. This is the one that I found simpler. And as a product manager, I am used to mockup, and that's the outcome of me writing on a tablet. So just to give you an idea, you can see there are red blocks at the top, A, B, C, D, and there are blue dots, blue blocks. I need to speak faster and make a mistake. So there are blue blocks at the bottom of each of the red blocks. So as you see, the top one are in red, which are higher in priority. And as you go down, the priority lessens. So how does that work? So if you map it out with a use case over here, I have written a use case, which is, let's say, Facebook's use case. Starts with login. A would be login. check timeline. Users would be checking timeline. That would be B. Posting would be C feature, and then D might be logging out. And individually, if you have to complete the journey, you'll see that once you build A, B, C, D, you complete a journey, which is a user's journey. And these individual components are very much important for development. If you even want to start the objective, individual ones like A, B, C, D must be built. So I have written A, then B, then C. So it represents a journey, user's journey. And then as you go down, these are basically sub-features. What do I mean by sub-features? Like let's say if A is login, A1 might be login through email address. A2 might be login through phone number, and so on, so forth. So basically, what product manager is saying, if you build login, you have to give me the first priority is within the sub feature is email address. If you're not able to do it, then in next quarter we will target to have OTP based login or whatnot, sub features, whatever he has in the priority, and you can map it out. So once that is mapped, similar to this, map it out in this manner, following this principle, what you have essentially is a basic structure of the journey and all of the features in individual blocks, sub-features and features itself. And once you can visualize them, everybody is joined in the session, and there will be a negotiation going on. Like in this quarter, maybe the team lead or the developers are saying we can only build A1, A2, B1, B2, and maybe C1, maybe, I don't know. That's a rough estimation. And he says, okay, understood. So what would be your next release? My next release will be C1, C2, A3, B2, and B3. So this is how they can prioritize them and put it into blocks. And see, individual blocks are user stories essentially. And these are functional user stories. These needs to be functional individually. So once you go through that process, what will happen is a prioritization is done through negotiation. And product manager knows exactly what he is expecting in his first release, in phase 1 or phase 2. And he understands that. And also, if there are optional journeys, within that expectation, they can mark it out. Like if they will have time, they will pick it up. And individual blocks can be contributing to individual functional story, which the product manager would have an idea of writing now. That's story mapping. And the benefit of it is basically write functional user story, which are shippable. I've mentioned what is shippable and releasable. And if the whole journey is an epic, we know what epic is basically a huge requirement. Like really big one. Normally what product managers do, they write a PRD and dump that PRD as an epic and then break it down from there. And that's the problem, where he does not know where to start and where to finish. So individual components of user story will have incomplete parts. Through that exercise that I've shown with the focused approach, sitting together, coming up with discussing the requirements, listing out through that structure, he will be able to break it down into manageable chunks. What do I mean by manageable chunks? Manageable chunks of functional user story. And because you went through that story, already an agreement has been done that we are able to release this. So it's baked, the prioritization is baked into that process itself. And he understands that the highlighted part, which are agreed on, would be part of initial release, and what would be part of next release. So even the release plan is somewhat done. I would not say it's completely done, but the product manager knows what to expect. Maybe there would be a deviation of 20, 30%, 20% or whatsoever, but he will know that these are the features would be releasable once the journey is done. And as he knows all these things, an alignment is complete within the stakeholders. So in this Scrum team lead and the developers, the QA, they already know what to test, what to design, what to build, what to ship, and product manager exactly knows. So all of the expectations are baked into it, along with, because the prioritization is done. So what I'll next step is like splitting the story. This is more of the structure of how product manager would split the story, and which is basically Once you do that exercise, he knows, like, I'll go back to this. So individual stories are in blocks. Now he can follow this and create that splitting method with these following ways of writing story. So the product manager may choose to, there are like 2, 3, or 4 splitting methods. These are which I found really interesting because it fits the bill, fits the structure or the process that I have defined, and makes it easier for the product manager as well, because he is able to understand what does functional mean. So over here, he can split it. These are all practiced in the industry. Yeah, there are structures how you are able to do it. I'm just bringing those out, which I'm able to relate with this process. So if you define it through a user journey, the interface, like this interface might be one story, this interface would be another story, that interface would be another story, but the problem is there would not be a functional one. So over here, I have highlighted the red part. Let's say you dump in your credit card information, you submit it, you're able to look at it, or provide a summary of how this splitting method is through interface, because you are able to see this is a functional journey. This journey is a functional one. That's how you're splitting it by interface. And then product manager may try to follow some rules, like basic rules. This is also a very high level rules which can be connected with any writing method, splitting method, which is individual story. As these are functional, they need to be higher in quality. It needs to, just like unit test cases. Like when you write the code without the expanding functions of it, you are able to test the code on its structure, like how solid the code is. At the same time, the story can be following that same manner, which is it needs to be well tested. If you wanted to release that, you are able to release it. And so you are able to ship it, not release it, because releasable means it has a business viability. But shippable means it's functional. So you are able to stand on its own on that feature itself. So by following that rule, you can write that story or break it down into chunks. And now, test case scenario, this is a very familiar one. So if you're writing a story, what will happen is there will be acceptance criteria. Normally what QAs do is take that story, follow the acceptance criteria, and create test cases. In this case, you can do the same thing. What you can do is basically take all the story. Those are all test functions, and under those functions, individual acceptance criteria can be subset of those test cases, and that's how you can split it. Like if you are like when you are talking to QA, you'll be able to see, interestingly, like they will talk about some acceptance criteria or test case scenario. Based on those test scenario, he will spit out a question, and that's how you will know that if I split the story in this manner, I'll be able to split the story in an effective way. And also, the most interesting part is, in this way, a lot of corner cases comes up, because QAs are usually looking for corner cases, and those will be coming up. And also, this one I've been practicing for a very long time, which is if you write the journey of the user, there will be happy flow, there will be unhappy flow. Like let's say you submit your user name and password, and suddenly it's saying wrong username. You need a second factor authentication. Like that's an authentication problem that we want to address, but the issue is it's an unhappy journey for the user. And you have to incorporate that as a separate user story. And if you follow that manner, also the corner cases and exceptional cases, which are like not usually you are keen to think about, would come up. And you'll be able to clearly prioritize them in terms of the happy and unhappy journey, and you can map them up, and also you can visualize them as well. So this is an interesting way to split the story as well. Now I'll be recapping. I have come to the end, like close to an end, where I've talked about some of the benefits in the beginning, but now I'll recap them so that you can connect it a little bit better. So when I said like effective requirement analysis, through that process, Why it's effective? Because it's through discussion. Not one vantage point is provided, but multiple vantage point and like perspective are provided in that session that I've shown. That is how an effective requirement analysis can be done. Also, in shared ownership, I talked about shared ownership because everybody is contributing. Everybody knows what they have like talked about, provided the requirement, and when it's built, everybody is happy because his input is taken. And that's how eventually a shared ownership is brought in. I'm not again saying product managers are not the owners of it, but they're facilitating decentralizing that ownership. Effective breakdown, I've shown the story mapping method and also the splitting method. And through that, you can effectively break down individual stories into proper user story, and developer would be able to functionally develop it and test it as well. And because there are a lot of paralysis is being done, back and forth discussion, which are reduced in one pack, in one joint session, a lot of wastage is reduced and reduction of timeline can be achieved. So here are some final tips. And those tips essentially mean, like, because I'm trying to introduce this story writing method into a functional Scrum team, agility is baked into it because prioritization is done there, feedback is taken, collaboration is being done, at the same time feedback is taken. Through that, I think it fits the bill. And also, because collaboration and cooperation is key, everybody needs to contribute. Everybody needs to come together in providing those requirements. That is very important. And also, if there is an urgent requirement, like when there is like an OHI or something coming from Allah that this needs to be done, you can shrink it down into a smaller 1 or 2 day or half an hour for that requirement. So it fits that bill as well. And this is, last 2 points are very important. And as I was working on this process, there were queries of how this, like, the process would break if the product manager is not able to take a decision. Like in that session, there needs to be a common buy-off that whoever is there needs to have the final decision, and that decision needs to be taken there. And that's very key. Or else the whole thing falls apart. Because imagine you are stuck in that room and suddenly product manager says, "Amar boss's সাথে কথা বলতে আমি আসতেছি. I don't have the clarity. Let me talk to other stakeholders, then come back." And the team is sitting idle. So it won't work. And also, when the requirement is given away by the product manager, he needs to identify the business case. He needs through logical manner. What do I mean by logical manner? I mean, like, he needs to have matrices. He needs to have, let's say, his validation of why this requirement should be built. It might be, like, let's say, the churn rate needs to increase. And when the retrospective comes in, the product manager will say, yes, it has increased. So that's how the process would work, definitely if product managers are logical in terms of their requirement. So that's the crux of the whole process that should be taken care of, kept in your mind, that if it has to work, it would work if you are following these the agreements. So with that, I come to an end. Yes. Yes.
So could you please share an example of a shippable product versus a releasable product, one example each? And my second question is, if you are a project manager and you are assigned a role of a product manager, so how to shift your mindset from a project manager's view to a product manager view, and what are the core differences that we should keep in mind between these two roles? Thank you.
Okay. So your first question is basically like the difference between shippability and reusability. So the shippability is basically, if, again, I come to authentication, like if I am developing the authentication module, I'm developing, let's say, the interface. You are able to insert the username, the password, and that's it. You are able to log in. And sometimes you might provide, let's say, false or wrong password, but nothing shows. So the prompt is not there. It's not letting you log in, but still it's functioning. So in terms of functionality, it's working. Now the product manager can say, oh, you need to have a prompt, a dialogue showing that there is a problem. So that becomes releasable because users would be using it and would be knowing that I have mistakenly put the wrong password. So that's the difference between shippability and releasability. And your second question is product manager's role and oh, this is very difficult. I've been doing it for a very long time, and I would not advise for it unless you understand what product manager mean. Like product managers, like if I give you an example of a project manager, there is a structure, a complete structure of how the project should be pulled off. The project should have risk factors which needs to be analyzed with permutation and combination. And that process is basically baked into the project manager. But for a product manager, there needs to be an iterative understanding of what customer wants. Like if you build and leave it, your objective is done. Project manager's objective is completed. You have done your job. But in that manner, that's where the difference starts. You start looking at what's happened to your product. You're getting into the market. You're getting into the feedback mechanism, the feedback loop. And once you start doing that, then you start acting like a product manager. So you have done that part of developing that project, but you don't know how it's performing. That is where product manager's role starts and a project manager's roles end. And once you have the distinguished factor in your mind that how much do you want to do that? Like, let's say I want to get into the mindset of a product manager. Go talk to the customer. Go see how you have built. Take their feedback without saying that you have built it because there will be other chaos. But you can say, like, that product is amazing. No, don't you think? He said, nah, just like Pathao, I have a rubbish experience. So you can get the feedback. Why do you have that experience? Let's sit for an interview, user interview. Talk to them. Have an FGD. In project manager, when a project manager delivers a product, he basically goes through an audit, like if individual checkpoints has been done. But product manager, being a product manager is completely a step further down the line. You have to have a complete understanding of what the product manager's role is encompassing the product's life cycle, because you own it rather than you just delivered it as a project manager. I hope that answers your question. Anyone else? No? Cool. Then we can end. Yes. And anyone wants to get in touch with me? I don't have any QR, but still, my number is there. You can take a picture. No QR. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.